Hello and welcome to Who's the Boss? It's a Star Wars podcast from laughingplace.com. My name is Mike Celestino. I am your host. I am the lead Southern California reporter and editorial director for Star Wars content at Laughing Place. This is episode number 183 of Who's the Boss, and we will be discussing the latest episode of the animated series from Lucasfilm called Star Wars The Bad Batch, which was released on Disney Plus this week. And for that discussion, I have invited back on the show a fellow Star Wars fanatic and a very talented cosplayer, Caitlin Beards. Caitlin, how are you? Thank you for coming back
Hi, thank you so
on the
much.
show to talk about Star Wars.
I'm so excited to be back. I am so excited to talk about the Bad Batch. So happy to be back. Thank you for having me.
Great. Yeah, thanks so much for coming back. Last time when you were on the show, I think we talked about Ahsoka, and
Mhm.
I knew you were a great guest. I wanted to have you back as soon as possible. So
Thank you.
here we are. Let's before we get into Star Wars, let's just find out what you've been up to lately. Anything interesting going on in your life? I know I mentioned you're a cosplayer. Anything happening in that sphere?
So right now, I'm actually currently teaching a course on cosplay and costuming at the school that I currently work at. It's a 3 week long workshop intensive in regards to just learning how to build armor and 3D prints and all these other really fun stuff. And this week is my second week, and it's been absolutely amazing. I've been enjoying it immensely. Other than that, I just came back from MagFest in January, where I debuted a couple of new costumes, both of which were from the web show Critical Role. So I did Laudna's Level 10 from Campaign 3, and then an original concept based off of Vexalia from The Legend of Vox Machina. So other than that, I'm currently working on some new projects and getting ready to head my cosplay department later this year for Colossal Con East. So yeah, it's been busy, but it's
Yeah,
been a positive busy.
that's amazing. Yeah, you sound like you've been very busy. I don't know Critical Role very well at all, so those references are kind of lost on me. But I'm sure they were very, very awesome costumes. And where can people go to check this stuff out?
So my Instagram is Lady Ava Designs, all one word. So that's
Yeah.
where I post a majority of my work. I also do like haunt Twitter every once in a while with Lady_Ava, and those are really the two places that you can find most of my work, if not all.
Great, yeah, and I really recommend going and finding that stuff. It's very cool to look at. Let's say hi to Sonia in the chat. By the way, we are recording live via the Laughing Place YouTube channel, and if you want to comment or ask any questions, we'll be happy to address them here on the show. So let's get into something called the 5 Star Wars questions. Caitlin, this is your second time on the show, so you have graduated to level 2 of the 5 Star Wars questions.
Oh God.
How are you
Okay.
feeling about this? Are you ready for this?
I hope I put me in, coach. I'm ready. Let's do it.
Okay, okay. Number 1 of the 5 Star Wars questions, level 2. Do you have a favorite line of dialogue from a Star Wars movie or television series?
So, for just a single line of dialogue or a whole monologue, there's kind of two things in here.
Okay.
The first one, the single line, is from Star Wars Rebels, and it's Ahsoka's iconic line of "I am no Jedi." I would get that tattooed on me if I could.
Well,
Like,
so you must be thrilled because they just put out this whole line of apparel
yeah,
based on that one line.
yeah. And do I own pieces? Yes. And am I
Okay.
so happy to own them? Yes, I am.
And that
And
was
then
I think that was done in concert with Disney Parks
yes,
and, her universe to get
yes.
working together, right? And last time you were on the show, we talked about your experience doing the Her Universe fashion show, so you know about all this stuff. But, great choice, yeah. It makes sense that they're leaning into that part of Ahsoka's history. What was your other one that you said you have, like, a monologue too,
So,
right?
not really a monologue, more like a conversation, but it is the scene between Anakin and Ahsoka when she's leaving the Jedi Temple. That
Okay.
whole scene, like, I could watch that 18 bajillion times and it still has me in tears. Like, it's just such a wonderful, like, dynamic between the two of them, like, showing, like, the difference between the characters and the growth of the characters. That, hands down, is probably still one of my favorite parts of all of Star Wars.
I think I've only seen that once, and you said you've seen it hundreds of times. I gotta go back and rewatch all I gotta Clone Wars was a big gap in my Star Wars knowledge for a long time, and I finally saw the whole thing, and now I feel like I gotta revisit it because it's such there's so many hours of the show, it makes up such a big chunk of the Star Wars lore. So I got to revisit Clone Wars at some point, especially with the amount of stuff, especially in the Bad Batch, we're getting a lot of Clone Wars
Yeah.
stuff carrying over. So I have to put it on my list to watch all that again. Number two, which Star Wars planet would you like to live on and why?
So it's going to sound super cliche, so forgive me for sounding cliche, but Naboo.
Yeah,
I adore Naboo. I know that you can actually like visit locations that they shot in with Naboo. Like I believe they're in Italy, in some
yeah.
retrospect here, southern Italy, and it's just beautiful. Like if it feels so tranquil, it feels so serene, and it's just gorgeous. And if listen, if I could actually go and visit, then by all means, let me go and visit because they're absolutely Naboo, hands down, hands down.
Naboo has been a popular choice for this question, because it's basically like Italian countryside,
Super
so
good stuff.
yeah, it's appealing to want to go there for sure. So, a popular choice, but not a bad choice for sure. Number three, what do you have a favorite era in the Star Wars storytelling timeline? So the examples I always list are the Old Republic, which is thousands of years before the original trilogy, then the High Republic, which is hundreds of years before the movies. Then you've got the prequel era. Then you've got the Reign of the Empire, which is between the prequels and the original trilogy. Age of Rebellion is what we call the original trilogy era, the Galactic Civil War. Then there's the New Republic, which is the Mandalorian and all the shows that are connected to that. Then we have the Rise of the First Order, which is represented by the sequel trilogy. And I also want to give you the option of choosing the Legends timeline, which is all the expanded universe stuff that has been made, decanonized when Disney bought Lucasfilm about a decade ago or more. What do you think, Caitlin? Which of those for eras in the Star Wars storytelling timeline is your favorite?
See, this was probably the most difficult question
Okay.
because all of them have their pros and all of them have their cons. And for me, I finally think I settled on the prequels
Okay.
because I feel like it was the height of just everything coming to an head before it all imploded upon itself. And I feel like that you were getting like the peak of what Star Wars' universe was before its downfall. And once again, like the inner like Jedi nerd in me was like, well, High Republic though, and so I was like, but I have to go with the prequels. I think it's a little life before everything went bad.
Right, right. And yeah, we're going to get into talking about that a bit more when we talk about the Acolyte trailer in a little while. So I bet you're excited for that. Uh, Number four, which Star Wars creature would you like to have as a pet?
Love cat. I love cat. I love cat.
Another this goes hand in hand with Naboo as the number one choice.
To
Yeah.
be fair though, like the if I was sitting here going, "Ugh, is that like that too much of like I have the big like sleeper little cat plush that a friend got
Yeah.
me from Disney. I love that thing. But the other one is more of an obscure critter from the Star Wars universe, and it was in The Last Jedi, the Crystal Foxes.
Yeah.
The little guys on crate. I love their design so much. They were one of my favorite things. So between that and a wolf cat, like I'll have both. I'll take both. Why not both? Porque lo nos dos.
What was the name of that? It was that like a Volptex or
A Voltec,
something?
I think. Yeah,
Yeah.
I always call them like little crystal critters.
Right.
Like I have a little shirt that says "Adopt a crystal critter" with the fox on it, and like crystal
Right.
critters. That's what they are to me.
Yeah, both very cool. The crystal fox would be harder to cuddle with, I
Oh
think,
yeah,
but
but you're so
um
cute.
so this last one here is one of my favorites. Let's pretend you're Kathleen Kennedy, you're the president of Lucasfilm. You could call in any creative person if they're famous or otherwise, a filmmaker or an author. You can bring them in to have a meeting with you about creating their own Star Wars story. Who would you like to see on the other side of that desk?
So I went like a little meta here. I have one living director and one director who has passed away. So I
Okay,
really
that's
have
fine.
like two things here. So for the living director, as weird as it may sound, just to see maybe them do like a Star Wars short, Tim Burton.
Oh,
I would
okay.
love to see like a Tim Burton take on a Star Wars story.
Sure.
A little bit on like the creepy side, a little bit, just I would love to see something like that because I think it's like out of left field kind of thing, but it would
Yeah.
still be kind of amazing, especially if he takes like over with the dark side stuff. I think he'd do such an incredible creepy job on it.
Now, I was a huge fan of Tim Burton growing up.
Mhm.
Love Beetlejuice, love, Pee-wee's Big Adventure is one of my favorite movies ever made. Nightmare Before Christmas, the
Mhm.
Batman films. I'm less of a fan in like the latter half of his career, though he's had little highlights here and
You
there.
like
How have
90s.
you felt about his like recent stuff?
Um, I could take it or leave it.
Yeah,
I'm kind of like like you. I'm a fan of Beetlejuice. I'm a fan of the
yeah,
Batman films. I really just adored his 90s, early 2000s. Is I feel like peak Tim Burton. Even
yes.
in like 80s, 90s, even like that whole
Okay.
section right there. That's when he was like at his peak, in my opinion.
Are you excited
Some
for
people,
Beetlejuice 2?
yeah.
Beetlejuice?
Have you seen the shots? Like they
I
released
did,
them.
yeah.
Yeah, I was sitting here being like, okay, well, the looks of Batman, maybe. But as for the other director,
Okay,
fortunately, somebody who had passed away.
yes.
Um, since it was such a massive influence on the Star Wars universe, I would have loved to see Kurosawa direct
Okay,
something Star Wars.
yeah.
Mainly because since so much of the inspiration came from a lot of his earlier, like his works, and I think it would just be such an interesting take to see what he would have done with it. So,
Yeah, we've talked about a couple Kurosawa movies on this podcast because George Lucas got successful in the 70s, obviously, and he was able to help Kurosawa make a film in
mhm,
the 80s, which we talked about here on the podcast. And then we've also talked about the influence of like Hidden Fortress and Seven Samurai and stuff on the Star Wars franchise. So that would be a really cool choice leading into the kind of samurai
yeah,
origins of Star Wars. So yeah, I love both of those choices, and both would be very different takes on the Star Wars filmmaking universe. Let's get into some Star Wars headlines for this week. We had some big stuff. In fact, there was more stuff breaking today, and I like couldn't even keep. I'm working on other stuff, and I'm like, I can't organize all this. So we're just gonna. This is all the stuff that came up before today, and
okay.
then next week I'm gonna talk about include today's news because there's just too much to jam in. But let's talk about the Acolyte. This is a show that got announced a few years ago, and we've been patiently waiting for this. And we know it takes place at what they call the end of the High Republic
Mhm.
era. It is created and show run by Leslie Headland, who was the co-creator of Russian Doll, a series that I have not watched yet. It's on Netflix. Do you know Russian Doll?
I've heard of it. I haven't gotten a chance to watch it.
Okay. So yeah, something I again another thing I've been meaning to check out for a long time. But what was your first reaction to this? We finally got the poster. We got the release date. It's going to start on June 4th, so a month after May the 4th,
Mhm.
exactly. Two different posters. The trailer. I did a shot by shot analysis. You can go and look it up on laughingplace.com. But what was your reaction to all this, Caitlin? What did you think of the Acolyte stuff?
I am ludicrously excited to see what they're gonna do with it. It seems as if they, like, I know it's really kinda gonna be focusing on that rise of, like, the Sith within, like, the High Republic and everything,
Yeah.
and I really like, from the little bit where the thing that got me, like, I was hooked into this trailer, like, when you see the younglings meditating at the very beginning, and the little one just goes, "What do you like, what do you see? What are you feeling?" And she just goes,
Yeah.
"Fire," and I was like, "Her, I like her." That one right there. She's the problem. It's her. But I was just kind of sitting there being like, this is like a whole other different take. This is something that's going to really kind of shine a light onto what a lot of mainstream Star Wars really didn't get a lot into, which was the
Yeah.
Sith culture and like the
Right.
growth of the Sith and the dark side. And I think I'm just ludicrously excited. Not to mention, it looks beautiful.
Yeah.
Every shot, every costume, every bit. And also, I'm just going to give a shout out to all of my friends in Saber Guild right now who got really excited over the yellow lightsabers because you don't see
Right.
the yellow lightsabers very often. And they were so excited, be like, I feel validated. Big shout
So,
out to you guys. Yes, you were completely validated.
I'm very happy for them, and my understanding of the yellow bladed lightsaber is that means you're a Guardian class Jedi, right? So,
Guardian
uh,
Sentinel. Yeah.
Guardian or a Sentinel.
Mhm.
Lots of analysis obviously coming out all over the place of this trailer. People are picking it apart. Some interesting theories out there. We don't have to go into all of them, but the big question that I have, and a lot of people have, and I'm sure they've thought of this, but the big question I think that's kind of floating out there is in the prequels or in the Phantom Menace, they say like, "Oh, the Sith have been extinct for however many hundreds of years or whatever, um, and thousands of years." I think they might even say.
Yeah.
But in this trailer, it looks like the Jedi encounter or might encounter a Sith or somebody using a red bladed lightsaber that has force abilities. So if they have encountered a Sith here, this takes place before the prequels. Why don't they know about that later on? I don't know. Do all these Jedi die? Do they not get to report this to the Jedi Council? What are your thoughts on what happens there?
So I think my crazy theories. Let's dive into it. My crazy
Yeah.
theory here is that either A, they don't survive to report the situation here, or B, in some way, maybe one or two of them may survive to be like, hey, this is a thing that happened, but they're either shunned or not
Mm,
believed. And
right.
any record that may have been made about them encountering a Sith of any way, shape, or form here could have just been completely disregarded from the archives. But I like to think that nobody's getting out of this. Like it is time. Like
So it might be like a Rogue One type situation where we can't get we can't get too attached to these characters because they might not last very
nobody get
long.
attached. It's all gonna go bad.
Well, I'm very excited for this. I said we did a little chat about it when it came out on one of these live streams, and I said, I've been following and reporting on the High Republic since it started. I got to be in the room when they announced it. I've been on the front lines interviewing the authors and stuff. And now that it's coming to live action, it's a couple. I think it's a couple hundred years after, or maybe like 150 years or something after the novels,
Mhm.
something like that. So we don't get everybody. It's not all the characters from the books and comics carrying over, but
Like a
there,
little bit.
right, there are little connections. Like we'll have this character Vernestra Ruo.
Mhm.
She's in the High Republic literature publishing side. She's also going to be in the show. She pops up in the trailer a couple times. There's also a Wookiee Jedi in the trailer that they're calling Kelnaka. But I don't understand. I have this feeling, this gut feeling that it's Buryaga and he's
Mm.
like going under an assumed name or something.
You
I
didn't
don't
say
know.
anything.
Yeah, I don't know why I just don't understand why it wouldn't be Buryaga because we know Wookiees are long lived and
Right.
he could be around. So we'll find out. Maybe I'm wrong about that.
So
But
many unanswered
yeah,
questions, and I'm just so excited to see what
yes.
they do. Like,
Is Yoda gonna show up? Because
mm,
Yoda, the Jedi Council, there are on the Jedi Council at the time of the Phantom Menace, there are people, alien species who live many hundreds of years who are
right.
on the council. They are also on the council back in the High Republic era. So this is in between those two. Will we get to see that Jedi Council and those more famous characters pop up? Who
Also,
knows?
the really interesting thing is that they could also it could be like a shush shush puppy thing here with the Jedi Council for people who've been on that council for so long. This could
Right.
all be like, we're gonna pretend this didn't happen.
Yeah.
Nobody saw anything. We're just gonna keep it to ourselves. Okay,
Well,
great.
that's
Thanks.
my friend Alex over at Star Wars Explained kind of brought that up when he did his analysis of the
Mhm.
trailer, and he said, "You're a High Republic fan. You mentioned that before. You've read the books and stuff, right? So there's this creature called the Nameless
Mhm.
that's capable of basically like sucking the Force out of the Jedi and
Yeah.
leaving them as like these ashen husks. And Yoda and a couple other members of the Jedi Council found out about this and they kept it secret. So that might be something like why wouldn't they learn their lesson? I don't know.
They
Hopefully
never
all
learned their
this
lesson. Let's
yeah,
just leave it there.
the
It's part
Jedi.
of their downfall that they didn't learn their lesson. So.
Exactly. Oh boy. The Jedi, yeah, they got to rethink the way they do things. All right, but speaking of the Acolyte and the characters in the Acolyte, we also got announcements from Hasbro, a popular toy company that makes, they have the license for all the Star Wars action figures, and we got images of the Acolyte action figures in both the Black Series, which is the 6-inch scale, and the Vintage Collection, which is the 3 3/4 inch scale. So Black Series is getting Jedi Master Soul, Jedi Master Indara, Jedi Knight Yord Fandor, Padawan Jeki Lan, and then May, who is the assassin that you see in the trailer. Those are the five first characters that are getting action figures. Are these do these appeal to you, or are you a collector of this
I
stuff?
love to look at them, but if I start
Yeah,
collecting them, there goes my bank account. Like,
right.
I just
Yeah.
love looking at them, though. I'm like, maybe I'll get into that when, I have more money.
I am the same way. Yeah, I love them. I mean, I do collect them, and it definitely affects my bank account. So, um, I also love looking at them. They are very, very cool, and these follow suit. They're very neat looking action figures coming. I think you can pre-order them now. Actually, I'm not sure exactly when those will ship, but they all look very sweet. And you can see the pictures on laughingplace.com, or if you go to Hasbro Pulse, that's where you can pre-order them. Speaking of Hasbro, during this so they did this live fan stream yesterday morning, and they revealed those Acolyte figures plus a new role play helmet from the Mandalorian of Moff Gideon's, like what was that called, the Mandalorian, what is it, the with the red horns, you remember the
Oh, I'm not remembering.
yeah, the you know what I'm talking about. The Moff Gideon's Mandalorian
Yeah.
style helmet. There's
Oh,
a special name for that, but I can't remember. That looks very cool. And then also he's getting a play set for the action figures in the vintage collection
oh, nice.
of his Imperial light cruiser, the hallway from that, which I'm more of a play set guy than like a
Mm,
vehicle guy, which this is kind of both, I guess.
yeah.
So that looks very cool. Um, a lot of interesting, fun stuff coming from Hasbro. They also mentioned that there's this project called HasLab, which is where they do their really big experimental toy releases. Like they did the Jabba sail barge, they did the Razor Crest from the Mandalorian. Right now, they're making the Ghost from Rebels. All really like large scale
Mm,
action figure vehicles and play sets. And they said that a new HasLab project is going to be announced this May the 4th week. So just a couple weeks from now. No, sorry, about a month and a half from
mm.
now. I got my dates mixed up there, but we'll be getting a new HasLab project from the vintage collection. So the 3 3/4 inch scale. That'll be very exciting
Nice.
when that comes up. Let's get into Disney parks a little bit. We got updates about Season of the Force. So this is the seasonal celebration of Star Wars at Disneyland Resort here in Southern California. It happened once before. It started when The Force Awakens came out, the fall of 2015, and now it's back again. Very excited about this. And the big updates we got this week were about the fireworks experience that you can go stand in Star Wars Galaxy's Edge and watch the Disneyland fireworks from that area, but they will be playing in Galaxy's Edge. They'll be playing John Williams music to sync along with the fireworks. There's also new information about the merchandise, the snacks, and the photo pass offerings at Disneyland Resort during Season of the Force. Caitlin, is this something that you'll be able to experience, or
I really want to.
yeah,
I adore the parks so
yeah,
much. And I am actually going to be in California later this year for D23 Expo.
yeah,
So I am really hoping that maybe it's probably going to be finished by the time we get out there, which will be very sad. But this is something that I would, if they ever get to do it again, I would like time to go,
right,
because I love when they do Star Wars related things in the parks, especially since they go like all out. And seeing like stuff like this, like I've always wanted to see the fireworks from Batu. That has been like a goal of mine, to see the fireworks in Batu. And for this, I'm just sitting here going, yes, like, oh my gosh, yes. And the last time we were there, they did like this, the photographers, the photopass photographers did like an amazing like shoot for my boyfriend and I, because we were Disney bounding as Kanan and Hera from Rebels.
nice.
And it was just, I love the park so much.
Yeah, so unfortunately, Season of the Force only runs through. Okay, yeah. So May the 4th will fall like right square in the middle of this 2 month period, because
Mm,
Season of the Fourth starts at the beginning of April and it runs to the end of May, I believe. Unfortunately, when
rude.
you're here in August for D23, it's not going to be going anymore. But hopefully, I'll run into you at D23.
Yeah,
That'll
no,
be
that'd be
great
great.
to say hi, because I'll be there too. And that we had a lot of news about D23 coming out this week as well. So just a crazy busy week at Laughing Place with both Star Wars news and just general like Disney and Disney parks news. Going into Star Wars comics for the week, real quick, I just want to list off. There were 4 comics that got released this week. We're getting back up there in the number that are coming out, because we got the Star Wars Visions Takashi Okazaki one shot. This is the only one that I actually got a chance to read so far of the ones that came out this week, and it was awesome. Really, really loved it. If you like that Star Wars Visions episode, The Duel,
Oh,
which is, I think it might be the first episode in the
mhm.
first season, right?
Yep.
And this one has been built on, there's a novel, there was another comic that came out before this, also by the creator of that short, Takashi Okazaki, and now he's come back and did created this other prequel. Actually, this new comic takes place before all that other stuff, so might be a good place to start, but really recommend that one. And then also we got Django Fett #1, a new series, I think written by our friend Ethan Sachs, who did the Bounty Hunters comic that ended not too long ago.
Mm.
Thrawn Alliances #3 and the High Republic #5. I still need to find time to read these and review them. It's just been too crazy busy this week. Caitlin, do you keep up with the comics? I don't recall.
I really wish I did.
Yeah,
All of these sound real, especially like the High Republic stuff and the Vision stuff, I would be reading in a heartbeat. I just have no time. I wish I had
yeah,
more time. I need more
I
hours
know.
in the day.
It's my job to read them and I don't have time. So it's like they churn them out sometimes, and 4 is a lot for
Yeah.
1 week. The most that there ever was 7 comics in 1 week. So hopefully we don't get back up to that point, but I gotta probably hopefully by next week I'll be reading and reviewing these. Let's see. The final headline for this week is the Star Wars Imperial March. This is the merchandise campaign that's going on right now from Lucasfilm and Disney products. We've got a lot of reports about this on laughingplace.com. Roosevelt's, the shirt company,
Yep.
amazing, amazing stuff. Girls Crew, I'm not sure what that is exactly, but have you heard of that?
Uh,
Um,
I've heard of the shirt company. I haven't heard of Girls Crew.
yeah, I got to
Yes,
review
definitely
a.
looking at the shirts right now.
Oh, okay, there you go. I got to review a watch that got revealed today
Ooh,
from Citizen. I'm mailing it back. They didn't send it to me permanently, but I got to check it out. I took pictures of it in Galaxy's Edge and everything. So that was a lot of fun. But they've been dumping all these new merchandise reveals, I think, kind of leading up to May the 4th, as throughout this month of March, which they're calling Imperial March. It's not all Empire themed stuff, but it's that's kind of the guiding principle
gotcha.
behind it. But
So I
yeah,
can
go ahead.
actually answer the question about the Girls Crew stuff. They
Okay,
actually make really very lovely jewelry.
great.
For the female Star Wars fan or whomever wants to wear the jewelry,
Sure. Yeah,
obviously.
anybody. Yep.
They have some really. They just released some beautiful dark side stuff in collaboration with this, where they have the Stormtrooper dark studs that you can get, and a really gorgeous Vader ring where it's Vader as the stone in the middle, and then the whole band is just a dark color, like gunmetal color, and it's
Okay,
red stones all around the outside. So
cool.
for all
Yeah,
the dark side girlies like that.
there you go. Yeah, it's all about the dark side this month during Imperial March. So you can check all that out on laughingplace.com, or I think starwars.com likely features all that too. Okay, let's get into our main topic for this week, which is the latest episode of The Bad Batch. Very exciting final season, and we are officially halfway through now. This week's episode is called Bad Territory. But before we get into that, Caitlin, like I mentioned earlier, last time you were on the show, we talked about Ahsoka. So you haven't talked about Bad Batch yet. What is your history with this show? And, have you been watching from the beginning? Do you enjoy it in general?
So my history with the Bad Batch is that I started as soon as they announced that the Bad Batch was coming. I was excited because I really wanted to like have a little bit of growth with like the actual characters. I really love these particular clones immensely. Um, I have been enjoying the show. I've watched the first 2 seasons. Every week it came out. My boyfriend and I would stream it together. It was such a good time. Um, Am I a huge fan of things like related to clones? It's kind of like a hit or miss for me with a lot of clone content.
Okay.
But for this, I've been really enjoying. I think that it's such a growth of character development with the
Yeah.
clones itself, and I've just been 10 out of 10. I've been enjoying every episode so far, so can't complain.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way about the clones. It took me a while to relate to them. I think it's, like I said, I watched the Clone Wars series fairly recently, like within the last 7 years or so was when I finally like sat down and went through the whole show, and I was like, I don't care that much about the clones. Like, people freak out about certain clones, and there's like whole fan groups are dedicated to like, I don't know, fives or whatever. Like I couldn't tell them apart, I guess. And then, which is, they're clones.
Yeah,
So
you're
uh but I do think it was smart for them in this series to zoom in on, okay, here's this group of clones. They're literally not like the other clones. And you'll get to know them more over time. So I think that was good thinking because it helped me relate to these characters. And also along the way, I got to know Rex a little bit better. And I got to know, Echo didn't start out as part of the Clone Force 99 Bad Batch. So um got to know him too. So I am picking up on what makes each of the other individual clones outside of the Bad Batch special
Mhm.
too along the way. So I do appreciate it for that. And yeah, I think this season has been very strong so far. But what did you think of the previous 7 episodes of season 3, not counting this week's episode?
There's so many questions. I love how
Yeah.
they're just trying to tie a lot of the Clone Wars and the Bad Batch into the films. And you can feel like that's what they're really going for here.
Yeah.
Every single episode, I think they've really kind of knocked it out of the park. I love seeing the development of Omega and her character, seeing everything with like Crosshair. All of it has been just really excellent writing and really good storytelling. Not to mention, just for the animation nerd in me, the lighting in this show is like light years above all their other animated series. Like, and I'm just sitting here being like, this sets such a rich tone for all of these like very there's some dark stuff in some of these episodes. I'm sitting here going,
Yeah.
it's setting such a nice rich tone for this. And I'm like, I'm here for it. I love it. So I really just appreciate also that Omega has a pet now. Love the dog.
Right.
I'm here for it. And just seeing like growth and development of, especially like I got teary eyed when they reunited with her, and I'm just sitting here like, we
Yeah.
have their child back, we're brothers. So I mean, it's I have no notes. They're doing a fantastic job.
Yeah, it's been an emotional ride for sure. And, like I said, we're halfway through season 3 right now. This is the final season.
Mhm.
And the other kind of notable thing I think about where we are at the moment is they sent out screeners to the media of this
Hmm.
season, but this was the final episode that like the press got to see. So everything after now is a big question mark, even
Hmm.
for people who have like seen advance, screeners of the show. So I have a feeling they're, keeping stuff close to the vest. We can't really see their hand at the moment of what's coming up, but I think it's going to be very interesting. This week's episode was called Bad Territory. It was directed by Nate Villanueva, written by the story editor was Matt Michnovitz. He did both of those jobs this week. In general, Caitlin, what did you think of Bad Territory?
I thought it for a second. For most of the episode, I thought, oh, this is kind of like a filler episode. We're kind of getting like
Yeah,
we're starting to like branch off to get a little bit more information, but do a little bit of world building and everything like that. But I think the thing that the last 5 minutes, obviously, was me sitting here going, "You don't say." Okay, now we're getting to somewhere. Gotcha.
yeah,
But overall, the first thing that came to mind is when they landed. I'm blanking on the name of the planet that they went to hunt down the target with Fennec.
did did they give us a name? I don't even remember if they gave
I
us the
don't
name
even
of
know
the
if they
planet.
got a name.
Yeah.
Undisclosed location. I
Yeah,
referred to it as Florida, the planet.
right.
Because I'm sitting like, oh, they're in a
The
marsh. Oh, we're on
bayous,
an
the bayou.
airboat. Oh, there are alligators. Oh,
Right.
we're in Florida.
Florida planet, I like it.
Florida planet. But overall, I thought and bringing in like another character who's in live action, bringing him into animation, 10 out of 10. And also just, I really loved it.
Yeah, it was a good one. It was, you know, the word filler floats around there a lot, and it's kind of become like a buzzword, I think. But I did kind of lean toward calling it that in my review. Although I think I prefer the term like side quest.
There you
I think is
go.
probably
I dig
appropriate
that.
too, because this whole episode is about, okay, at the end of last week, Rex says to Hunter, like, you got to figure out why the Empire and this Dr. Hemlock guy is so are so interested in Omega. Why do they need Omega so badly? So this is the beginning of that
Yeah.
task, that quest for the Bad Batch. And the way they do that is they reach out to the Wanda Sykes character, Fee Genoa, and she calls in with a hologram and says, "Oh, well, there's been bounty hunters, rumors of bounty hunters going after what they're calling M count targets." And we've talked about this on the show before, how we know the fans know what M count is, right? Midichlorian
Yeah.
count. The characters in the show don't know what it is. I don't even know if the bounty hunters really know what it is, right? It's kind of like hush hush kind of thing. So this points them in the direction of Ming Na Wen's character, Fennec Shan, who we know from The Mandalorian and the Book of Boba Fett, and she's popped up in the Bad Batch previously as well. What do you think about Fennec Shan? Like, she has been kind of a recurring supporting character, recurring guest character, we'd say, in the Bad Batch. Why do you think she works so well on this series as a good foil for this team?
Because I think she works as such a great foil for them because she is a character who knows what she wants and she knows what her job is, where she sits in the universe, and it doesn't really matter what other people will say, do, or unless it's affecting her payout at the end. And
Yeah.
I think she's such a great foil for them because she's like, "Oh yeah, no, you can trust me." And then at the being like, "No, you can't. Let's be real here."
Right.
But she has this air about her where you're like, oh well, yeah, no, I probably well, we didn't trust her before, but we could trust her
Right.
now, and she's very good at that. And
Yeah.
that's what I really love about her as a character is she's like, I can make you think that I actually care, but at the end of the day, no, I don't. So, and I think, and not to mention, Wen brings in such like a rich performance with this character because she's even admitted in interviews, she's like, I love Star Wars so much. And you can
Yeah.
tell in her performance how much she's so dedicated to the
Yeah.
character. So for us to be able to see her in multiple series now and building her reputation as like this incredible bounty hunter, yes. There are other bounty hunters out there, man. Love her, embrace her. She's amazing. And not to mention the design of her just overall is everything. I love the part where she's just like, I don't go in the water. You go in the water. Go ahead. I'm just like, yes.
Yeah, I'm pretty into Fennec Shand as a character as well. And I agree about her performance. You can definitely hear Ming Na Wen's exuberance, I think, shining
Mm,
through, which doubly makes it sad to me that they haven't done another season of Book of Boba Fett, because I think that's kind of like the forgotten of the Disney Plus live action shows. I
yeah.
would like to see more of that and more focus on Fennec Shand. Maybe she'll pop up again, in the Mandalorian movie or whatever. Who knows?
Please.
We'll see. But yeah, here, like you were saying, it's kind of like a fool me once, fool me twice kind of scenario
Yeah.
where I have to admit I was kind of fooled in this. Like, I didn't really see. Usually, I'm pretty good about seeing the twists, the
Mhm.
betrayal coming at the end, but this one kind of got me. Did you see it coming?
I kind of saw it coming because
Yeah,
I'm sitting here going, "There's no way she's just going to be like, yeah, no, I'll help you out."
right.
Even though they got her like a huge bounty with this guy, but at
Yeah.
the same time, I'm sitting here going, "No, like, she's gonna double cross them." And lo and behold,
Yeah, I felt kind of dumb at the end of this episode where she basically sells them out to this unseen client who I think we can all kind of guess who this is, right?
I got two thoughts here.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, we'll just say right now, like, they in the trailer, they showed us that Asajj Ventress is
Mhm.
back, right? So that seems like the most
Yeah.
likely candidate for who that would be. Are there other options?
Oh no, that was my number one.
Okay.
That was the number
Um,
one. Or
yeah.
either that or somebody within the empire who's looking for them, but honestly, it's Ventress, let's get real.
Yeah. They kind of disguise the voice when she's talking to this other
Mhm.
person over her
Made him sound like a
transceiver.
little Animal Crossing character.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, but before that, we see this whole bounty hunting mission to the Florida planet, like you called it.
Florida Planet.
I like that they were going after this very dangerous bounty hunter who was a praying mantis, basically. And this praying mantis alien species it was in the original Star Wars movie,
Mhm.
is in one of the first alien creatures that we've seen. in the background some shot of the cantina in Mos Eisley. So that's always fun when they dig into the, I don't think we this character or this alien species hasn't popped up that often. So
No,
it's cool when they bring something out of the archive like that and give life to it in that way. And we got to see how they move around. And I just really liked this. The character's name was Silas. Where did I put that? Oh, Sylar
yep.
Saris. Sylar
Yeah,
Saris.
that 10 times fast.
Right, exactly. I hope we get to see more of that guy because
Mhm.
that was a fun adversary for them to go up against, and a lot of fun action in this episode. There were space alligators and mines and stuff that they had to dodge. But we also got a B story, kind of a quieter, introspective B story about Omega and Crosshair who stay behind on Pabu. And we got one of those scenes where Hunter's like, "You're not coming with us this time, Omega." And Omega is like, "Yes, I am." But this time it actually didn't work
Yeah.
because she had to stay behind. They think it's too dangerous for her to go out there now. Why it's different this time, I don't know. But story wise, it serves this kind of further bonding between Crosshair and Omega as they stay behind on Pabu and they work on this. He's got shaking hand syndrome,
Yeah.
which they kind of discover is from his PTSD from going through this very traumatic experience of being held captive and experimented on Mount Tantus. What did you think about this whole subplot to this episode?
I think it was very well done because touching on anything in any type of writing with a character with PTSD can be a very difficult thing to write sometimes. And I feel like they handled it in such a way where it was a very organic reaction. That's how somebody, I feel like I've known plenty of people with PTSD, and it's a lot of the time how people will like to handle it. It's like, no, it's fine. I can work through this. This is my thing. I got
Right.
this. It's not, but they're like, but it's not physical, it's a mental thing. And they're sitting there going, no, 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 it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. And I feel like the way that they wrote Crosshair for this was incredibly, incredibly organic for the situation. And the way that Omega was so keen on being like, well, I could show you some things to help you. And I feel like that in general was just like the building of their relationship is like I feel like it's more organic than most of the other characters right now because both of them went through kind of like a traumatic experience together, and it's a shared thing where
Yeah.
the other members of the Bad Batch can't relate to that. So for them to kind of have this bonding moment, I feel was like we didn't like. Was it really like something that was desperate for the plot? It's definitely going to come up and be a very instrumental to the plot. I think for this little like B story basically. But I think that it's just really I thought it was very well done. I thought it was just like I said, very, very organic. And I think that's what sold it to me the most.
Right. Yeah, it worked out well, I think. And we get the scene with the droid AZ3 kind of examining Crosshair's hand and saying, "Well, there's not much I can do for you physically. This, like you said, it might be a mental problem. You may have to deal with some psychic therapy, not psychic in the telepathy kind of way,
Yeah.
but in
Psychiatric.
psychiatric, I guess is the term." So ultimately, where they end up is Omega teaching Crosshair how to meditate, right? So, and she says she learned this from Gungi,
Yep.
the Wookiee on Kashyyyk, which is tying back to an earlier episode. And actually, when I rewatched this episode of Bad Batch today, there's a line where Omega says, "Close your eyes." And that brought me to the first line of the Acolyte trailer when Master Soul says, "Close your eyes." Like, okay, this is a weird coincidence that this came out within days of each other. But
Yeah, and I feel like
yeah,
with Omega leaning into the meditation with Crosshair, I feel like there may be some more subtle nods to, the extent of what her M count may be and why it's so interesting.
right.
Because the meditation techniques are all, it's all based in the Force and letting yourself kind of go into that deep meditative state in the Star Wars universe puts you in a deeper connection with yourself and thus with the Force. So I'm really curious to see if they're actually going to play off of that in any way, if they continue to have this interaction of meditation with each other. I'm sitting here, and when that scene was happening, I'm like, come on, just levitate a rock. One rock. That's all I'm looking for. A rock. So, I mean, it would have been too early, I feel like, with how many episodes are left to have that revelation right there.
Right.
But I think it's definitely, if this is how it's going to continue, and I hope it does, because I feel like this would be such a great like underlying storyline for this kind of meditation between the two of them to continue. But if they go into having something like, oh, she's like floating a fork or a rock or something, like I
Mm,
right there, I think it would be like, oh, that's why they're so interested in you.
right.
Clone with who can use the Force.
Yeah, I think there's, I've seen theories about, is Omega force sensitive? We don't really know yet, but there have been hints, and the whole M count thing, going back to that. So yeah, it's an interesting thread that we'll be following over the next the remaining half of this season. Speaking of which, where do you think things are going for Crosshair specifically? I At the beginning of this episode, I was like, oh, somebody had asked me, one of my previous guests had asked me if I think any of the other members of the Bad Batch will die
Mm,
before this season is over, and I threw out Wrecker, because Wrecker would literally like wreck people if he got killed, because he's like the big teddy bear.
right.
But now I'm thinking, like, storytelling trope wise, it kind of makes the most sense to kill off Crosshair
Mhm.
after he gets redeemed.
Yeah.
So he'll probably sacrifice himself in some way, saving the other characters, or whatever. But where do you think Crosshair's story is ultimately going to end up?
I honestly agree with you. I think if there's going to be another character death, it's going to be Crosshair, and
Yeah.
I think it's going to probably be saving Omega
Mhm.
because of the bond, that the level of bond that they're building with these two characters. I feel like something's going to happen where he's finally able to find that inner peace and come to terms with what has occurred to him. The hand will steady out. He'll be able to, get off the shot to save Omega, go in, rescue her, but at the end, lose his own life at the end of the time.
Yeah.
If that's going to be the case, it will be very dramatic. And the mental image is like, I'm sitting here with the board with the yarn, like connecting me, like this is going to happen type situation. But I think they're setting him up for the inevitable demise of the redeemed hero.
Right. Yeah, that would be my guess at this point. So where we leave things, the status quo at the end of this episode is we kind of have that hint of Fennec Shan has kind of sold out our heroes to possibly Asajj Ventress.
Mhm,
So there's that hint of that, what's to come with that. Then there's Crosshair's kind of on the road, first steps on the road to recovery
mhm,
from his PTSD, and needing to get control of his hand so he can be better at his job, which is basically being a sniper, right? Um, Anything else that you want to say or observe about this episode before we talk about what's left in the rest of this series?
I mean, like I said, I think the two underlying plots of the episode in general were very well thought out. I really loved the mood and the lighting. Also, the choreography that they were able
Yeah,
to animate for the fight scene between like Fennec and Wrecker and Hunter and their target, I think was all really interestingly well done, especially since we were exploring a new, like not a new alien species, obviously they've been
yeah,
there before, but seeing like the capacity of what they could do. I think all of that in there was just awesome. The fights and everything in this season has just, I feel like they've dialed up it because they know it's the last season, so they're like, turn it up to 11.
yeah.
Forget the 10, turn it up to 11. We need to make it everything look good. Um, but overall, I feel like for a mid point in this season, I think this is a really good point because they're sitting here going, we're starting to divulge into like a kind of like subplot with Crosshair and Omega, but we're still keeping to the main plot of, well, why are they hunting down all these M count people? And I feel like they really set it up very well so that we can continue these two storylines into the last stretch of episodes.
I also want to point out, you observed so many qualities about this episode, but I want to point out some of the, I guess what I would call like a matte painting in live action. But I know there's a difference between the CGI characters in this series and some of the backgrounds. Like some of the backgrounds look like paintings,
Yeah.
like oil paintings. And there was one shot where they cut to the beach on Pabu, or like the cliffs overlooking the shoreline on that island, and it was just gorgeous. Like that was like frameable artwork. So I want to observe that as well. Very cool looking show, uh, in addition to all the other qualities that you observed there. Lastly, let's look forward here. Like we've talked about, we're kind of at the halfway point. If we consider the finale coming up is probably going to be like double length, so we're really are at the halfway point of the season. What do you hope is coming up? What do you expect from the rest of the season? Do you have is there any characters that you hope pop up or anything like that?
I just actually had a total thought here of when
Yeah,
they inevitably run into Ventress. I
yeah.
feel like she is going to tell them what an M count is, and she's going to recognize the fact that Omega is probably force sensitive, and they just had no idea because clones aren't force sensitive. I mean, I feel like that may be the thing.
Mm.
Like we may find that out like next week, kind of level of
Oh
finding
boy.
out type situation. Because I
Yeah.
really feel like if they're going to learn anything, and I mean, Ventress had like a slight redemption in like the finales of Clone Wars, if I remember correctly, like a very mild one, but it was a redemption nonetheless. So it almost makes me wonder if like Ventress is going to be a bad guy. I don't think so. I think it's going to be like the anti-hero type situation with Ventress. At least that's what I'm
Okay.
hoping for. But I really think that maybe if anything comes up, she may be able to point the crew in the direction of being like, you need to be more concerned than you actually think you need to be concerned, because it's not that she's cute that they're trying to get her, like
Right.
she could be a real danger here if like not properly trained or taken care of. I mean, we all know like why they're looking for that M count in everything, because it's like,
Yes.
oh, tie those movies together with the animation, let's go. But I really want to see how they're going to handle Ventress's character, because everybody
Yeah.
remembers her as like the big, like crazy, awesome Sith. But at the same time, I'm sitting here going, what?
Not
Yeah,
only not only that, but they made a big deal when they revealed that Ventress would be in this season, that they know that this novel came out,
hmm.
which what was the title of this novel? I'm blanking on it. Do you
Oh my
remember?
god, I'm blanking.
Um, uh, anyway, there's a whole novel that takes place, I think, after the Clone Wars series, because it was supposed to be episodes. It was an arc of the Clone Wars that never got made, so they turned it
Right.
into a novel instead. And I think I have not read this novel. It's before I was reading and reviewing every Star Wars novel that came out. But
Was it Dark Disciple? No.
Dark Disciple is the title of it. Yes, that's correct. And so, spoilers if you haven't read this. I haven't read it, but I know that she dies at the end of that book. And they said, "Oh, we are going to address that." Um, do you have more knowledge than I do about what happens to her at the end of this? And do you have a theory as to how they're gonna deal with this in the
I
show?
really wish I could say that
Okay.
I did, but, it's like the one book I own and I haven't read
Yeah.
yet. It's like on my stack of books I
Right.
need to read. All I know is that for her character and everything like that, with everything that she's gone through and the build of the character throughout the Clone Wars, I really feel like we're going to be walking into an anti-hero situation where
Yeah.
because everybody's going to be like, "Oh, she sold him out to the." I'm sitting here going, but hear me out, maybe not totally bad. So your guess right now is as good as mine. I am
Okay.
very excited to see what they're going to do, bringing in such an iconic character from the Clone Wars into this. I
Yeah.
really would love to know what they're going to do. So I can't
Me
wait. I'm
me
excited.
too. Yeah, looking forward to it myself. What about the Bad Batch in general? So we both kind of theorized that Crosshair might not live to see the end of the season, but do you think the rest of the characters might find a happy ending on Pabu there, where they've set themselves up to kind of have this uh, idyllic lifestyle?
It almost seems like almost weirdly too positive right now
Right.
for something Star Wars, and for them to be able to like live out the rest of their days in peace. I mean, we know what happens with Rex and everybody else because they do appear again in Rebels, obviously much older. But as for
Right.
these guys, like, I don't it's really kind of difficult because this whole section of what they're trying to tell story-wise, it's very unknown territory for a lot of things in the Star Wars universe. And meaning like with the Bad Batch and figuring out like tying, like I said, the movies to the TV shows and
Yeah.
connecting the universe, which is what Dave and his team are trying to do right now. And I really wish that I could sit here and be like, my brain would love like the dark kind of like depressing ending because it would be good TV in my opinion, but
Yeah.
hey, it's just me. But because it's an animated series, I mean, they could definitely be like, Omega is not going to get caught. Or they're not going to be able to get whatever they need, or they do, and that's how they connect everything. And then that would be a really crazy way to connect everything together, would be like, oh, the reason we have our clones is because of this one little clone that nobody knew about until the Bad Batch. Um, I really hope that they get a happy ending. I want to see all of them live happily with their dog Batcher and just be in a corner being so happy. Are we probably going to get that? Probably not. But, I'm holding out hope that something good will come of this and they get to have that ideal, like, end of thing living on an island, unbeknownst to everybody, live in peace and be left alone.
I am gonna right now, I'm putting money down on Batcher, the dog, the Lurka Hound will survive this season.
Yes.
Okay? I'm gonna say 100% positive
Yeah.
Batcher is gonna live. That's the only thing I know for sure.
They kill
Uh
that dog, people are going to riot. It's going to be over. People will flip. I mean, I'll be so mad if something happens to Badger. I'll be
Yeah, I
so
think
mad.
that's true of probably the entire fandom right now. Anything else that you would like to say about the Bad Batch as a series in general before we move on here, Caitlin?
Uh, Only once again, I feel like Dave and his team have knocked it out of the park. This is
Yeah.
some really great storytelling. And if you aren't watching The Bad Batch, you should go check it out on Disney Plus because it's an incredible show and it really just ties a whole boatload of the Star Wars universe together. And
Yeah.
especially if you love clones, this is the show for you.
Yeah, it got me to connect with the clones, like I said earlier, so that's a big positive. That's gonna wrap up our discussion of the Bad Batch for this episode, but let's get into our final segment here on Who's the Bossk. It's called First Steps into a Larger World. This is where we talk about the media that we've been consuming and or enjoying outside of Star Wars. My example this week is very outside the box for me because I know very little about Taylor Swift, but we had some guests over on Saturday this past weekend. We had a Ghostbusters marathon. We watched all 4 existing Ghostbusters movies, and we followed that up with the Taylor Swift Eras Tour concert movie on Disney Plus. I've heard I think we actually kept track as the movie was going along of the songs that I was familiar with, which my total ended up being 10. And this is a 3.5 hour documentary film. So 10 out of however many songs that was, it's not a huge percentage, but Taylor Swift has permeated the pop culture uh landscape. So it's 10 is pretty good for me, for somebody who isn't exposed to a lot of pop music, but I enjoyed it quite a bit. It's super impressive. Just the whole production is really cool looking. All the tech that they used and the stagecraft and the dancing, really neat. And the other thing I will say about this is I felt exhausted for her, for Taylor Swift by the end of it. The fact that she's doing this every night on the tour is nutso. It's just a long show with a lot of choreography and singing and playing of the instruments and everything. So yeah, it's a recommend from me. Not the kind of thing I watch a lot of, but um, real good stuff. Taylor Swift. I'm a Swiftie now. So that's it for me. How about you, Caitlin? Anything
uh,
you've been watching or reading or playing lately?
So I'm gonna second first and foremost. Yes, the Taylor Swift Eras Tour. I
Yeah.
adore that. I saw it in theaters. I didn't get to see it live. I saw it in
Okay.
theaters, and I think I became a Swiftie when I left the theater.
There you go.
Think I became a Swiftie like maybe 2 songs in because wow, it's an incredible thing. And my boyfriend and I actually watched it on Saturday as well, and he was like, "Oh,
Nice.
I'm not that interested." And about like 4 songs in, he's sitting there going, "So, but as for other things, I just recently finished Final Fantasy VII Rebirth
Okay.
on the PlayStation 5, which is if anyone is unaware, Final Fantasy is a long running JRPG series from the company Square Enix. This is the second game in its remake of its classic RPG from 1997, Final Fantasy VII, where you follow along a group of people just basically trying to save the planet, which is basically every other RPG, which sounds kind of silly, but this is probably hands down one of the best remakes, best games of the year so far for me. I put over 100 hours into it, and it
Wow.
was worth every minute. Every mini game, everything is just so fantastic. And then I'm about to get on Friday. I got the new Princess Peach game for
Oh, wow.
the Nintendo Switch. Completely switching gears there, but the new Princess Peach game for the Switch, I'm very excited about that because it looks like a fun like little. Um, it's a very big glow up from her first game, which was on the DS, and it was not good. Just like the gameplay was a little awkward, and it's the game is worth a fortune now. If you own that DS game, you are sitting on a small fortune, by the way. But definitely, those are the two things. And obviously, I've been taking a lot of Critical Role, and currently looking for a new book to read. I have a couple that I may be starting. The Fourth Wing is one that everybody keeps throwing at me to be like, read the Fourth Wing, read the Fourth
Yeah.
Wing. So I'm like, fine, I'll read the Fourth Wing. But other than that, the big one was Final Fantasy VII Rebirth.
Yeah.
Like I said, you're going to spend 100 hours seems like not enough time. So,
Yeah, Final Fantasy is another one of those big gaps in my pop culture
mm,
knowledge. Every time I think about trying to get into it, I'm like, this is such a huge undertaking. Not just one game either. How many total games are there in this
so
franchise?
of the main franchise, there
Yeah,
are 16.
yeah,
I have played all 16 because I grew up with the
right.
series. The first thing I ever played on my PlayStation 5 was Final Fantasy 16. And although like none of the games are connected together, so you don't have to worry
Yeah.
about like a
Okay.
continuing story. There's continuing elements like like not characters, excuse me, like creatures and base gameplay elements. That's all the
Yeah.
same. There are two of them that are MMORPGs, massive online
Yeah,
multiplayer
those
games.
I will avoid because I don't like other people, but
I do play 14. I am not as active as I have been in the past, but I do
yeah.
play 14, and it's probably one of the best video games I've ever played. Story wise, it's incredible. And I know one other piece of media that is neither a book nor a video game nor anything else is since I live on the East Coast, I am taking in some Broadway next week, and I'm a big
Oh.
theater person. So we'll be seeing Spamalot on Broadway next week,
Oh,
which I'm very excited about because the cast is outstanding.
who's in the
Uh,
cat? So I saw Spam-A-Lot, Monty Python Spam-A-Lot,
mm,
probably a decade? No, wait, what year is it now? 2024?
yeah,
15 or more years ago. I
it's been a
don't
while.
I don't even remember. Was David Hyde Pierce ever part of the show?
Yes, he was in
I
the
think he
original
might have
cast.
been there. Hank
Yeah,
Azaria, was that the same
yeah.
time? Okay.
No, different. I think they were in different
Mm,
casts, but
okay.
different
I
relevant
don't
casts. Excuse
I
me.
gotta dig up my playbill from having seen that, but that is a great show.
Yeah, I actually have
Who's in
only
the
seen the
cast right
lead.
now?
So the main one that's popping into my head off the top of my head right now is Alex Brightman. Alex Brightman actually has been on Broadway for ages. The last show that he was in was The Shark Doesn't Work, which is more of a play than a
Oh, yeah.
musical, which is basically
The
they were
Jaws
talking
one.
about, yeah, they were talking about Jaws. That was what
Yeah.
the premise of the show was. And then before that, he originated the role of Beetlejuice on
Oh,
Broadway.
wow.
So, but he's also become, for one of the other things I've taken in, he's very popular in what was it? Has Been Hotel on Amazon Prime.
Okay.
If you haven't seen that, it's a phenomenal piece of adult animation, and I'm stressing the adult animation thing here because it's not for kids at all.
Yeah.
But he plays two characters in that, and then the spin-off series on YouTube, Hell of a Boss, which both shows, if you haven't had a chance to watch them, fantastic pieces of animation, and he's just phenomenal. Like 10 out of 10. I love the man's work. He's so good at what he
Yeah.
does.
I feel like I dabble in enjoying musical theater here and there, but Spam-A-Lot was definitely one of the,
Yeah.
because I'm a big comedy fan, big Monty Python fan, so that really appealed to me.
Yeah.
So I highly recommend that. And I wanted to ask you with the Final Fantasy thing,
Yeah.
if you could recommend just one, would 7 be the one of the single player games that you would recommend the most?
This is such a loaded question. Okay.
Okay.
Um, so for seven, if you want to start with the remake, sure, I would
Yeah.
say give it a try, see what the all the buzz is about it. However, I would actually recommend if you wanted to play a Final Fantasy game, My personal favorite is 8, which is an
Okay.
unpopular opinion, but mine is
It's
8.
okay.
But of the main series of games, I would say the original 7, the original 8, and 10. Those are the 3 games. 10 was a very big shift. It was the first one on the PlayStation 2. The
Okay.
graphics, first time it ever had voice acting in the game. So that's the one that I usually like to be like, this is the one you guys would love to play. If you
Yeah.
have never played Final Fantasy, this is the game for you. But 7, the original 7, not the remake, the original 7, I feel is still like such a masterclass of storytelling in an RPG. And
Mm.
that's why 7, it was my very first Final Fantasy, so I may be biased just a little bit. But 7, 8, and 10 are still like some of my top favorites that are not the MMOs. The
And
MMOs is 14 all the way. We will not be
okay.
taking any further questions.
The whole thing, the whole franchise definitely seems like something I would enjoy and get sucked into, but it's
You
like
would probably love it. I'm just gonna
yeah.
say, you would
So
probably really love the stories.
right. Lately, I have been diving back into Zelda, Tears
Yes.
of the Kingdom because I never finished it. And it came out last year and I played a bunch of it and then I got distracted by other games. Now I'm like, I'm gonna go through the rest of it. So this is anytime I have a moment, I go back to Hyrule there. But yeah, someday I'll pick up a Final Fantasy because I always see like, oh, you can get the older games now on PS5, stuff like
Yeah.
that. So
Yeah, they have
uh
them on Switch, PS5, but
yeah,
with Tears of the Kingdom, I feel you because I was so excited to sit down and dedicate so much time to Tears of the
right.
Kingdom. The game dropped the day I found out I got into her universe. So I maybe
Oh,
got like 2 weeks with the game, and
yeah.
then I was like, I am so busy with other things, guys. I can't. Big sad.
It's such a huge game too, because not only do you have the entire map from the previous game that has been, you know, altered
Yeah.
in ways that you'll find out if you play it, but then you have like an underworld and an overworld on top
Yeah.
of both of
The
those.
map
So
is so big, and
yeah,
my main thing is I like to run around first and, like, unlock
yes,
everything and be like,
that's
"Okay, let's go do the story now."
that's my exact
Yeah.
strategy. I drag my feet as long as I can before I go and do those like story missions. I am mostly about the exploration. Oh, my voice is starting to go. The exploration and the side quests, love all that stuff. But yeah, the video games, they take up a lot of time and they're awesome. But I gotta figure out a way. I'm always saying I gotta watch more movies, I gotta play more video games, but there's just not enough time in the day. So
No hours in
uh
the day anymore.
speaking of other pop culture, I wanted to quickly mention I do have another podcast that started very recently called Pop Culture Explorers Club. This week's episode is all about the Ghostbusters, so I'm very enthusiastic in that one too because it's one of my other favorite franchises. So you can check that out wherever you find your podcast. It's called Pop Culture Explorers Club. Caitlin, we got to have you on there and talk about something because you seem to be equally passionate about other pop culture. The idea of this show was like, let's talk about everything outside of Star Wars. So it's kind of like that first steps into a
Yeah.
larger world
Yeah,
segment.
no,
But
definitely. I would love to, and like I
yeah,
said, if you guys ever wanna talk about Final Fantasy,
yeah,
I'm here,
maybe
let's talk.
maybe we'll explore the world of Final Fantasy. Caitlin, thank you so much for coming back on the show. Really enjoy chatting with you. Where can people find you if you want them to find you?
So my Instagram handle is Lady Ava Designs, Lady AVA Designs, and also on Twitter every once in a while. I refuse to call it the other thing. It's Twitter
Yes.
with Lady underscore Ava. Those are really my two main things. I am on TikTok as well as I believe Lady Ava Designs as well.
Yeah.
I do make like content where you can follow along with some of my builds that I'm doing. Currently working on some stuff from Has Been Hotel. Currently working on some other original pieces and some stuff for D23 Expo. So if you guys are going
Oh
to
boy.
D23, I am working on something for that.
Yeah, I'll see you there. We gotta meet up at some
Yes,
point.
no,
That would be
absolutely. I would
awesome.
love that. I would love to
Um,
actually shake your hand in person, sir.
yeah, that'll be great. And I'd love to see your cosplay in person. That would be so cool. I saw you obviously in the Her Universe show, but are you going? But you're going back to Comic Con this year or no?
I would love to.
Yeah. Okay.
Right now, the main thing I think I'm focusing on right now is D23.
Okay.
But if Comic Con and Her Universe work out again, that would be amazing. But
Great.
I'm it's one of those things like if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. I have D23 and I'm very excited about D23. So
Great. I will try to stay up to date on that, and hopefully we'll run into each other next week on Who's the Bossk? We'll be talking about another episode of the Bad Batch, episode 9 of season 3, getting into those ones that we know nothing about. So pretty exciting to check those out and talk about them here on the show. As always, please visit laughingplace.com for all your Disney news and opinions. My name is Mike Celestino. I'm on Instagram at Who's the Bossk Pod. Thank you out there for listening or tuning in if you're watching live on the Laughing Place YouTube channel. As always, see you next time. See you real soon. Thanks again. Bye.
Bye.